All right, I'm going to talk about a parallel analogy of the narcissistic devaluation via Napoleon's march to Moscow. So, this is an interesting time in military history, and one that's been repeated, which is the protracted invasion of Russia to try to attack Moscow. And the Napoleon did it, and then afterwards Germany tried it and failed. And it's the winner that just kind of grinds people down and winds people down. Um, Death by a thousand cuts. And there's a similar journey that you go on with the narcissist in devaluation. And really, you're both being drained. You're being drained because you are not only the only partner in the relationship providing it energy, but as if you're the empathic one. But also because the narcissist doesn't necessarily want to slip into devaluation. It's just they can't compulsively resist it. The interesting parallel is the soldiers were starving at the time. And they would actually, it was so cold and they were so hungry that occasionally they would go off as their horses were marching along. They would take a knife out and slice a piece of flesh off the horse's rump, and the frostbite would freeze it shut again, so the horse would still be functional until it's totally broken and dysfunctional from repeated um, taking away of its flesh. But that's what would happen. You'd be starving. You'd see this big moving mound of meat in front of you, and you know what? You took your knife out and took a bite, and that's what they resorted to. A lot of horse meat eating. But in the narcissistic empath connection, mutual addiction, the empath is the horse in this analogy, and they're feeding off of you, slice by slice, mile by mile, and it's all part of their kind of fuel poverty, which is or supply poverty, supply scarcity, which they're placed in perpetuity because of the emotional ruts they're in and their developmental ruts, right? So at an early age, they only see people as means to an end, as objects, as vehicles for a sense of stability and sense of significance through control. And so because that doesn't last, because they have to go on this kind of negative smear campaign, well, devaluation that turns into a smear campaign, because of their own limited perspective on receiving human value, and also because of their addiction, right? So mile by mile, slice by slice, it turns into it's a win-lose initially for the soldier and the horse, right? So the soldier is getting some nutrition and the horse is losing. Um, but and before, during the golden period, it felt like a win-win. Eventually, it turns into a lose-lose, right? So the horse breaks down. You're you're feeding off your partner instead of mutually providing value, and the soldier collapses as well because you run out of horse meat eventually, um, and horse meat isn't a full spectrum nutrition, and that's kind of what you want to think about um, in 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 a normative mindset versus a scarcity narcissist mindset. So you know a normal mindset is, listen, you have all kinds of food groups, and you have all kinds of needs as far as nutritional wise, a full variety of it. And you also understand that there's food everywhere, right? There's nutrition to be found everywhere. So a normative mindset, and everybody's evolving, is to see more and more value in the people around you, and receive from them in more in deeper and deeper ways. From a narcissistic perspective, it is constant. Say it's like a sugar addiction almost, right? So you do get some kind of energy from that consumption, but it's not a full spectrum diet, right? So you may be hyper focused on a sugar addiction and only search out processed sugar food, and don't eat if you don't have any sugar available. I mean, there's levels of addiction, right? But they have blinders on, as far as how they receive value from other people, and it causes perpetual scarcity, which causes eventually perpetual failure. So that is the loop they're on. The March to Moscow is a famous example of how that plays out. Win lose becomes a lose lose, and really failed from its conception. And Napoleon being this classic um, lower level or overt narcissist, it's almost a perfectly fitting example of what they do and how they treat people. So thank you for listening. Take care.